Hi, I'm Kathy McElvery, and this is the video portion of my presentation for HSCO508. When we talk about overarching goals, if we look at the definition, we see that overarching goal, the whole concept of an overarching goal acknowledges and encompasses the bigger picture, which makes sense. I wouldn't want to be or come across as a different person at work than I am at home. My delivery at work might be a little bit more formal, but the person is the same. The feelings are the same, the empathy is the same, or should be the same. That being said, I've drafted an overarching goal for myself to convey a spirit of goodwill in my interactions with those around me. From a communication perspective, that includes being a more empathetic listener and speaking in a more straightforward style and being more non-judgmental. How we're going to reach that goal, before we get to that, we'll talk about some definitions and some background, give a little bit of background on me, and enlarging the conversation is completely vital because it lets your speaker know that you care about what they have to say. You're invested in that conversation. Empathy plays a very big part in that, and so does nexting, just to keep building the meaning to that conversation and keep a dialogue going. Given my personal background, I would say that the uniquely you profile for me was very accurate. I'm the youngest of 7 children, and I'm from a military family, so good manners and loyalty, all of the qualities that the uniquely you profile described for me kind of came back pretty much right on. So what does that mean for me as far as conversation and its effect on how I converse with other people? From a textbook perspective, positive effects would be that I'm a loyal listener, I'm sensitive, and I'm a peacemaker, which is absolutely true. And negative, sometimes overly analytical, indecisive, and not a good public speaker, also very true. From a personal perspective, I would say that given my background, from a positive, the positive aspect of my personal background are that listening comes very naturally to me. Everyone's viewpoint matters. I tend to be very fair-minded in that respect, and I'm very articulate and concise when I'm speaking. I try to make my point as succinct as I can. Negatively, sometimes I can be over analytical, especially when it comes to business. I kind of read information into things that doesn't need to be there. It makes me very indecisive, and that can be aggravating for some people. And also, I also put articulate and concise when speaking under the negative as well, because when I do get into that zone where I'm concentrating on something, if somebody comes up and they interrupt me and I'm very, very busy, I can be very short, come across a little curt. I don't mean to be, but it does come across that way. So when we talk about interpersonal context, potential barriers in my interpersonal context, the biggest barrier for me is difficult conversation, where the subject matter in and of itself gives me a loss for words. Somebody wants to talk to me and they either have a problem or something very unfortunate happened. The other would be a cultural speaking style, different from my own, based on cultural or generational differences. What comes to mind there is most recently the idiom "my bad" for "I'm sorry" or "I apologize." The first time I ever heard that, I was taken a little aback, and again I was left speechless even by that. But I recognize now that it's an accepted use of an apology in American society today. But those are the types of things that kind of get in the way when I'm speaking, and leave me speechless, not knowing what to say. The other things that are barriers to good conversation or effective conversation would be internal and external noise pollution. Internal noise pollution, examples being hearing what you want to hear, those things that go on internally, the little thoughts that come in and creep in, or even the blank mind where you're too tired to even listen to somebody, can give you an inability to comprehend what somebody's saying, and it puts you out of sync with the person that's trying to talk to you and convey a message. Mechanical noises, all of these things, anything that would hinder or get in the way of somebody's message that they're trying to convey to you, getting all the way through and you being able to comprehend and listen attentively and be that empathetic level 1 listener that you need to be. So when we talk about the action plan, my first goal is being a better listener. There are many methods. The first absolutely solid method that I plan on using is prayer. I think that prayer helps in any situation. The second method would be mindfulness, remembering to stay in that moment with the speaker, filter out all the noise pollution, all the garbage that's out there, and just be there and listen to that person. They're the only person, they're the only one there in that moment, and what they have to say is the only thing there in that moment. Absolute empathy, focusing and encouraging that person to get their message across so that you can understand what they're saying and be able to carry on a good conversation. Dialogue. Help them out a little bit. If they're having trouble getting their message across, help them. Ask questions. Paraphrase, parafeel, and let them know that if you're not getting the message, you're trying to get that message. Goal number 2 is to speak more clearly and directly. Method number 1 again would be prayer. Pray that you can get your message across and have it heard in the way that you intend. Method number 2 would be using self-disclosure through open presentation. Don't be afraid to open up a little every once in a while, especially in times when it would be appropriate. Method number 3 is to say what you mean without oversimplifying. Use the me and that Stuart touches on, can be very helpful. Method number 4, guidelines for clarity. Don't present your conclusions as the truth. Present them only as your conclusions and the way you see something, and recognize that the person that's listening to you might see them differently. Even ask them for their input with respect to that. Share where your conclusions come from so that you know that your listener knows that there's a good firm foundation based on the conclusions that you're coming to. And don't exaggerate using always or never. That it kind of dismisses your listeners' credibility, and it's unkind. Method number 5, to be sure you're understood. Ask your listener how they see things differently. If again, getting back to that, everybody's viewpoint is important. Everybody's opinion matters. And how do we carry out these methods? Probably the best tool would be the talker listener card. The talker listener card is a great starting tool for establishing good communication habits, especially if you are intertwined in bad habits, being that level 2 listener where the eyes are glazed over and the brain shut down, as I like to say. Each person has a specific role with specific rules and goals, and it does help to keep both participants focused. And again, the biggest barrier, just touching on the biggest barrier again for me, would be the difficult conversation, which everybody faces. You just have to remember that when you do face a difficult conversation, empathy is what people are looking for. They're looking for you to be real, to be genuine, not necessarily find a solution or have an answer or have magic words that are going to make them feel differently. They just want to be heard. And if you can do that, then you're putting both of you in a better place. And that concludes my video presentation, and I thank you for listening.